Welcome into the 16 Sports Extra podcast. I'm Jackson Neal. That's Sabrina Hoover. And Sabrina, we're talking mainly Notre Dame women's basketball today because last night did not go as expected.
To say the least. Yeah, you were actually at that game, so I'll definitely leave room for your marks on this as well. But watching that game, I mean, two back-to-back losses, NC State on the road, and they come back home and they're like, all right, we're at home, but 24th ranked Florida State, they weren't going to be an easy opponent, but still, you're at your home crowd. You've been dominating these teams at home, especially on the road. They get back-to-back losses against Florida State now, and I mean, we went from them winning 19 games in a row and then haven't lost an ACC team at our ACC game this season, and now they need to beat Louisville and hope NC State loses to SMU on Sunday to kind of claim the conference title on its own. So just seeing where we started and now where we are now, it's just complete different. I mean,
that's all I could think about is we're recording this on Friday,
right.
February 28th. We were sitting here a week ago today, literally probably like at the exact time a week ago from today, thinking, can Notre Dame go 18-0 in the conference? Are they really the best team in the country? Is this the best team we've seen from Notre Dame ever? Like, I mean, yeah. we had a question of the day on our newscast like that, not like last week, and it's gone from all of that to, as you mentioned, back-to-back losses, and this season just seeming like this ACC regular season title maybe slipping away. That game against Louisville coming up on Sunday, we'll talk about that a little bit coming up. But I mean, just looking at these two losses, not at all what you were expecting for this Notre Dame team, especially last night. The NC State game, I mean, that was a game that I think we all we talked about it last Friday, but going into that, we knew there could be some issues. We knew that NC State, 13th in the country, going to be at NC State. They're such a talented team. We knew it was going to be a really tough home atmosphere. So I feel like that one wasn't too surprising. Double overtime game as well. It was like, I mean, that was anyone's ball game. Tough to lose that one, but that's not a bad loss.
And I was going to say, even to have Sony hit that three to bring it, or to bring it into overtime was huge in itself. It kind of showed that fight that we've seen from Notre Dame this entire season. So when that happened, I was like, all right, Notre Dame's going to, do what they do best, and they're going to come out here with a win. Unfortunately, it seemed like NC State kept, powering back and forth, and just Notre Dame could not hold on in that double overtime loss. But again, just like you said, it was just almost like, all right, that was NC State. They were a really talented team, but let's move forward. But yes, from last night, I want to ask you, because you were actually on the court watching that, what were your takes on this, especially towards the end of the game?
Exactly. So this game against Florida State was just, I think the thing I kept saying to people throughout it when I was there last night was, this just feels weird. It felt like a weird game. And what I mean by that is Notre Dame gets out to that early lead. And I mean, coming into this game, let's just say Vegas had Notre Dame projected to win by close to 20 points. That was kind of the expectation last night, even though Florida State is ranked. The expectation was for Notre Dame to win this game, and pretty handily.
Right.
And they looked the part. That first quarter, they got out to a double-digit lead. I think they led by 15 at some point early in the second quarter. It looked all good for Notre Dame. And then Florida State started hitting some shots, especially from deep. Carly Viegas, she got a couple threes. I think it was 3 threes in that second quarter alone. Just continually hit those. And after that, they cut it to close. They're able to take the lead. And you're thinking, okay, this is a close game, but as long as Florida State doesn't keep hitting three-pointers like that, Notre Dame should be fine. And then second half, the Irish just never really got it going, I think is the best way to describe it. And it just felt like they were out of rhythm from basically 2 minutes into the second quarter until the end of the game.
And I like what you said. It felt weird because even me watching that game, looking at Sony, looking at Hannah, looking at Olivia, and I was like, these are shots they normally make. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this looks like a team I've never seen before, really. I was like, am I watching Notre Dame right now? It was very weird, especially knowing that you're right. The way they started in the first quarter, and then, they trailed at halftime again. I think the first time they ever trailed at halftime was in that game against NC State. So I was like, okay, here we go again. Maybe, this is another game that's going to be back and forth. Another competitive atmosphere here for Notre Dame, but just seemed like what you said, it was just weird. And I think even in that press conference that Ivy had, she even said, after, Florida State made that 12-0 run, it kind of put them on their heels. And she said it felt like we were kind of chasing after that. So I think that's the perfect way of saying that, because it did seem like that. It felt like Notre Dame could not keep up. It felt like when they would trail or when they would come back, it seemed like after the little bit they would come back, Florida State just kept that run going, and they could never come back from that.
And I think right now is the perfect time to discuss the Hannah Hidalgo of it all in terms of these two losses. Going into NC State, we knew that they matched up well with Notre Dame. I mean, if you were watching that game, a lot of the time they had Sanaya Rivers, who was a really, really good player, but she's also 6'1", and I think her wingspan has to be maybe 6'2" or maybe even longer.
Right.
And on the offensive end, she was not really asked to do all that much in that game. Pulling it up right here, she did take 17 shots, but she was still just taking some shots. But especially later on in the game, it felt like guard Hannah.
Yeah.
And she was a good matchup for Hannah. She was, Hannah is a great player, but the one downside of her game is she is smaller. So when you put someone like 6'1" and that athletic, it makes it tough for Hannah. The problem with Hannah is her game is fantastic in a lot of areas. It is so good. I mean, I've on this podcast, on newscasts, have said she's the player of the year, and I've national player of the year. Like, that is the type of talent it is. The only problem when it gets with Hannah Hidalgo is when things aren't falling, when things aren't working, she still is so good she thinks she can still force it and get it going. And that's where you see the performances against NC State. 8 for 26 and then only 3 assists. Last night, again, 4 for 18, 1 assist. Both of those games, her shot was not falling. She still took the most shots, and the assist numbers are not there. She was not moving the ball around like that.
Right.
That's where I think the next level for Hidalgo's game has to come is, look, these teams are saying, we're just not going to let Hannah beat us because she's that good. She can single-handedly beat teams. I mean, remember UConn last year, UConn this year, Texas this year? She can do that. Right now, though, the problem is when her shot's not falling, she keeps trying to go for it rather than getting her teammates involved sometimes.
And I like that you said that and brought her up, because I think that was the big talking point was whenever, Ivy took her out, let her kind of calm down, let her breathe a little bit on the bench there. But you could really see vividly her not aggressiveness, just anger towards just the game. And she's so passionate about this game, but she was just angry about her performance or maybe how the team couldn't put up the shots here and there. But it was just... It's so good to see that passion, but you're right. I like how Ivy did that. I like how she was like, all right, Hannah, you need to, just have some time to yourself, relax, let this kind of fill you in, but then go back out there and, take it on. But I just think that she is such a competitor. She's such a big time player that brings big time moments, but she does need that kind of, okay, let's just calm down real quick. So exactly.
And I think, you watched the game on TV. So you were saying that they were showing Hannah on TV a lot. I was actually down there on the floor right by their bench, so I could kind of see and hear everything. And she was frustrated. I think a lot of people on the team were frustrated. And I think you made a good point right there is, Niel did a good job taking her out, letting her kind of breathe. But one thing with Hannah that we love is her emotion on the court. I mean, I think we always talk about how happy she looks. Like, what makes Hannah so great is that not only can she play so well, but then after she makes that tough layup, she's, screaming, she's having a good time.
Yes.
The downside of that is when things aren't going well. And I think last night we saw that a little bit where maybe mentally she got taken out of the game a little bit because of that level of emotion, especially when Florida State was just able to seem like they got what they wanted without too much effort, it felt like at certain points.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really sure defensively what Notre Dame was doing wrong. I mean, Tanaya Latson, she leads the country in scoring for Florida State, and that was pretty evident last night. The way she was finishing through contact was so incredible. But even someone like Michaela Timpson, she also had 20-plus points. She just kind of got her shot around the rim, and I don't know. Defensively, there seemed like some lapses as well.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of going off of that, but looking towards, I know they play one more in the regular season at home, but against Louisville. I kind of think that this is a moment where the team needs to look at everything and be like, okay, obviously this tournament's coming up. Like, this is all going to become really serious and going to be big for them. But like, what does the team need to kind of focus on? What are the areas they need to improve upon? And I feel like we saw, obviously, Ivy have a long talk with the team after the game, considering that the press conference started, an hour and 20 minutes
Yes, so it was 79 minutes.
79 minutes.
The game ended at 9:55. Press conference started at 11:14. I actually had to miss the press conference because I was on air at 11:15.
Yes, you had a show.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the first time that's ever happened.
Yes. So considering all those things, it seems like Ivy really had a long talk with the staff, with the team in the locker room, a lot about probably what they need to improve upon and what they did wrong in that game, especially knowing that obviously tournament play is coming up soon, and these are areas of improvement that they need to kind of figure out soon, because you never know. I mean, 19-game win streak. Now, we thought this team would be dominating, continuing, and, even going undefeated in ACC play, and now we're here. So it's like, all right, what do we need to really focus on? That's
such a good point, because you're right. We're getting to the time of this. I mean, there's one more game, and then we're at the time of the year where it's you lose, you go home.
Yeah.
It's like you play against Louisville, okay, then that's regular season's done. Then it's the ACC tournament, and you lose, you go home. And then no matter what happens in the ACC tournament, Notre Dame's going to the NCAAs. They're hosting it's all set. That's all set. But then you get to the NCAA tournament, and you're right. Probably have an easy first round game, but second round, no guarantees. Sweet 16, this team's lost in the Sweet 16 several years in a row. We are at that point now where one loss ends the year.
Yeah.
And to have these performances right now, that's what's just really concerning. And I think there's just something off. I think the biggest thing with this offense, with this team, is this feeling of, I think offensively we just saw it clicking so well earlier this season. And I think right now it's just not. I mean, Olivia Miles got 7 shots last night.
Yeah.
Maddie Westbeld only had 4 now. I know she got into some foul trouble. Sonia Citron, she is one of the most consistent players for this Notre Dame team. And I feel like at certain points she gets taken out in the games, or she just isn't involved in the offense as much as she should be, considering against NC State, 11 for 18, made that clutch shot. Last night, 8 for 14. She is efficient. She can make her shots. And I think sometimes even in these games, they don't view her as the number one option, but I mean, look at WNBA mock draft. She could be a top 3 pick. She is a number one option on a very, very good team. Usually, I think sometimes they have to kind of maybe usually Hidalgo at this point has to let other people kind of take that shine when the defense is clearly just saying, Hannah, we're not going to let you beat us.
Right. And I think at this point, the question is, there isn't a question about their talent. Obviously, we know they're talented. We've seen it this entire season. But I think the bigger question is, I hate to compare this to Notre Dame football, but I kind of want to compare it to the NIU loss, only because it's like, how do they handle success? At this point, 19-game win streak, how are they going to handle success going forward? And I'm not trying to compare that to NIU. Obviously, those are 2 different sports and also 2 different games. But in a time where you lose to NC State, and that was a big-time game, a really talented opponent, but then you got to look and be like, all right, how are we going to bounce back from this? Back at home against Florida State, another talented opponent, but again, handling success, continuing on, with the regular season. Will they lose to this opponent? So now what? Now how are they going to respond against Louisville? So I think that's all the biggest question right now, because there is no question that they're talented. They are talented. We know that, but. Yeah,
and you're right. And then it's Louisville this Sunday, as we're talking about. It's going to be another big one. I mean, it's another ranked matchup. They play double-digit ranked matchups this year, which is just incredible to think about. But yeah, hosting Louisville on Sunday, maybe people consider Louisville even a better team than Florida State.
Yep.
I don't think they don't have the top-end talent of someone like Tanaya Latson, but they still have a lot of depth. It's still a good basketball team coming into play on Sunday. And you're right. I mean, if they don't bounce back from this correctly, Louisville would love to come into South Bend, knock off the number 3 team in the country, and all of a sudden you're Notre Dame and you're looking at 3 straight losses to end the regular season, and that's not the momentum you want to take into tournament time. So
definitely not.
So that's just Notre Dame women's basketball. We're going to have more updates on that, of course, as they go through the ACC tournament. Hopefully we're talking in a little more positively. If you had asked me a week ago from today, I would not have expected to be talking like this about a week from then. So we'll kind of see that. But before we go, we want to talk a little bit about some high school basketball. The Warsaw girls are headed to the state championship.
Exciting.
Tomorrow night, Saturday night, they're going to be playing down there in Indianapolis. Sabrina, you're going. I mean, just this Warsaw team, it's an incredible run.
No, definitely. And I actually was there in LaPorte when they beat South Bend, Washington. Watching that game was crazy because, leading up to that game, it was like these two talented teams that have always, or South Bend, Washington has always been good at girls basketball, but here's Warsaw coming on this, amazing run, and seeing them both play together. They're both talented. They score a lot, but it was Warsaw that really, in the end, was really the most, I guess, efficient and the one that really fought back the hardest. And so South Bend, Washington had a lot of talent, and I will say that, but it just seemed like Warsaw wanted it harder, wanted it the most. And actually, they're seeking their first state title since 1978, which I think is crazy to think about. But when you talk to these girls, and I've gotten the chance to kind of talk to them during practices and stuff, they all are just so tight. They're all close. They all have the best chemistry, it seems like, on this team. And they all talk so highly of each other. They all talk so highly of the coach. So I just feel like they're on a run right now. And obviously getting to the state final is an achievement in itself. But if they can win this game, I think this is going to continue to put Warsaw girls basketball on the map. Exactly.
I mean, they're 26-1 this year. And you mentioned something there, the scoring. Jocelyn Bricker, one of the best scorers just in the state, hands down. I don't care what level you're talking about. I mean, we're talking 4A basketball right here. That win over Hamilton Southeastern, I mean, Hamilton Southeastern was kind of considered like, okay, they're going to win it all. It's like, everyone was kind of like judging, okay, when were you going to run into Hamilton Southeastern? That's probably when your season's going to end. And Warsaw said no.
They said no.
And the reason when you can score like they can, they're averaging 72 points per game as a team that's second in the state right now. When you have averages like that, and then you play against a really good team, a lot of times in the playoffs in high school basketball, what you worry about against these really good teams is, okay, can you score enough to keep up with them? Because Hamilton Southeastern, like, they have so much talent on that team that you're not going to stop them. You're not going to hold them below 50 points. You're not going to hold them below 60 points. Holding them to 61 is actually pretty impressive. So you're not going to do that. Can you score? Can you keep up with them? And the thing is, with Warsaw, they can keep up with anybody. And you mentioned there, too, one thing, the 1978 state title. Their other state title was in 1976. 50 years ago. They were the first state champions in this state. So now the 50th anniversary of the girls basketball state tournament here in Indiana. And they could do it again.
I was going to say, especially knowing that they've gone on this run and like talking to the team, a few weeks ago, it was like they all were, excited to play the next game. And I think that was right before they were going to play South Bend, Washington. So they were excited about that opponent, but it was never like, okay, we're going to do this and then make it to the state final. It was just kind of like, let's, next game at a time. Let's just keep, pushing forward. And I feel like that mindset has really helped them because they are a team that you seem so close and they seem like they can really, like at practices, they seem like they flow together and they their chemistry is top tier. So I feel like them saying, all right, let's just keep pushing. And here we are and now playing in the state final. It's like, all right, here they are, but they can honestly win it. And they can. So
exactly. So they'll be playing Lawrence North on Saturday at 8:15 p.m. down there at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. It's the final game of the girls basketball season here in Indiana, which is just crazy to think it's already coming up on that. Sabrina will be down there having all the coverage. Of course, you can catch all high school basketball coverage of 16 Sports Extra tonight with a bunch of boys action here on WNDU. But yeah, thank you so much for watching the 16 Sports Extra podcast. We'll see you guys next week.